Hello, everyone. I'm Anne-Marie Schieber, and welcome to the Heartland Daily Podcast. I am pleased to have as my guest this week John Henry Weston. John Henry is the co-founder and editor-in-chief of LifeSite News, and he is also the host of the very popular podcast on Spotify that goes by his namesake, The John Henry Weston Show. I invited John Henry on the podcast for a couple of reasons. First, I'm a fan of his podcast. And second, I am happy to say that I'm now working with LifeSite News on their TV platform as a contributor talking about healthcare issues. And also, John Henry is a citizen and resident of Canada, and he has experienced and reported firsthand on the heavy-handed approach that the Canadian government has been taking in the name of the coronavirus. You know, there is plenty of outrage in the US. People are fed up with the mandates in the US. But compared to Canada, the US almost seems like a beacon of liberty. Welcome, John Henry, to the podcast.
Thank you, Anne-Marie. Great to be with you.
John Henry, I want to ask you about this Freedom Convoy, which began last week and kind of reached a pinnacle this weekend. It is a truck convoy traveling across this huge mass that we know of Canada. Canada is a huge, huge country. I don't think a lot of people, even in the United States, realize how big it is. And these truckers are traveling across the country because they are just fed up. They are ready to get back to normal. We've got a little bit of video here from LifeSite TV. You've been doing a tremendous job covering what's been going on. You were in Ottawa over the weekend. I think this has taken the world by storm, because I think a lot of people think of Canada as a quiet, contented, compliant country. Have the mandates changed that?
Well, they have. This is, Canada they're a very apologetic people. The joke about Canadians always, when they bump into somebody or somebody bumps into them, the one bumped into says sorry, and that's Canadian. That's very true. Canadians are a very apologetic, likable, soft kind of a people. It's a joy to live here because there's a lot of friendliness and niceness, if you will. But of course, that has its negative repercussions as well. The go along attitude is here. And while you talk in the United States about the sleeping giant and it takes a while to get them riled up, that's much more the case in Canada. Basically, we had to get to a point where we were massively losing our freedoms, where all of the rights guaranteed in our Charter of Rights and Freedoms, which came to us in 1983, are thrown out the window. That massive numbers of people are losing their jobs, their livelihoods. Parents are watching their kids get basically barred from school if they're not willing to be vaccinated. They have to wear masks all day, despite any health concerns they might have. It's just mayhem. And finally, we saw a movement with the truckers movement going from one side of the country to another as a moment where there was finally some breakthrough. There's a lot of historical context to that, but we're in the midst of what really is a hidden communist revolution in Canada, where the normal procedure of slowly encroaching on freedoms has been accelerated to such an extent that finally Canadians are waking up. So this is, in one way, really good. So we're seeing some Canadians wake up and see what's going on.
LifeSite had an excellent article on February 1st by Celeste McGovern, who traveled on one of these trucks. I think she started out on the very eastern corner of the country and made it into Ottawa, which probably takes over a day. I don't know. It's so huge. Every time I drive through Canada, I'm just always amazed at how big Canada really is. She described Canada as a sleeping giant. But anyway, it just gave me chills the way she described the reception of Canadians standing out in sub-zero temperatures, waving the Canadian flag. When you were in Ottawa this weekend, did you have that same impression? I mean, these people, they're just so, I just feel this sense of revolution when I see this.
It is a sense, not so much revolution as relief and gratitude and a willingness to finally do something. We have seen in the trucker movement, in the convoy for freedom, Canadians, the heart and soul of Canada, the real Canada that everybody was hoping for and wanting, but we've been so misrepresented by the mainstream media. It's actually phenomenal. And that was really one of the key ways that Canada was sort of taken over by communists, by the left. And they really, really are communists. It's really not any kind of semblance of freedom. Remember, even Barack Obama, for all his leftistness, was left of our Conservative Party, while he was still defending marriage. I know it was fake, but nonsense. But nonetheless, he was still defending marriage between one man and one woman. Our Conservative leader at the time was entrenched in allowing for same-sex marriage. So we're far down the political spectrum, and we have no Conservative Party per se. In fact, that is one of the greatest pieces of news that has come out of the trucker. It's one of the greatest victories so far that's come from the Convoy for Freedom, in that the Conservative leader has been ousted. The Conservative leader was so pro-abortion, it's, all at taxpayers' expense up to and including the time of birth, all paid for at taxpayer expense. That's where abortion's at. The same-sex marriage issue is the LGBT, they can't get any possibly more rights. It's always to the extreme hilt of everything, and so there is no conservative movement, socially conservative movement at all. But the leader was kicked out for being so hardcore against the truckers.
Well, I want to talk to you a little bit about the politics in a moment. I kind of want to talk about how the media has responded to this convoy. It seems like almost kind of blown it off, dismissed it, portraying these truckers as being anti-vaxxers, just some fringe element. Do you think it's time now? Like, do you think people, I know people in the US are fed up with the media and they're just shutting it off. Do you think that could possibly happen in Canada?
That's going to be hard, because they have done, the left has done such a good job. We have, CBC, which is the national media, CTV, Global, and various media around, all of which is controlled by our government control board, which has actually removed any semblance of conservative media from Canadian television stations. You can't get them. Fox News was, of course, removed from most cable stations. When we had Sun TV, which was an attempt to get a conservative media back on the air, they refused them. So the media is under tight and total control. So alternative media is the only thing. That's why LifeSite was founded 25 years ago, because the media control in Canada is so staunch. It's unbelievable. The picture is completely, utterly false. It's a disinformation campaign like you've never seen. I was there. All of our reporters across the country have been there with the truckers, and not only the truckers, because there might be, some 20, 30,000 truckers. But in addition to that, there are the probably over 1 million Canadians that have come out to support them, that have put out videos. If you go online, you have to go to Telegram, of course, to get them, because Facebook's deleting them all. But you can see thousands of videos of people being with the truckers, supporting them. Amazing things happening. The joy is infectious. The tears of gratitude are so plentiful. These are friendly, happy, joyful people.
Well, you can't suppress that. And we had the first mandate rally in DC just a couple of weeks ago. And again, it was peaceful. It wasn't even like a Trump rally, which are also peaceful. But this was a broad spectrum of folks that I didn't typically see at, like, let's say, a Donald Trump rally. This was a really mixed group of people, a lot of people from cities, East Coast, blue states, who were fed up running, small businesses and can't, run their businesses. How do you think Trudeau is going to respond to what's going on in Ottawa? I mean, the streets are clogged. You were telling me a little bit earlier about just even now restricting transportation.
So this is what's really weird. They are so convinced of their superiority that they're willing to go hardcore in the face of all evidence. So Justin Trudeau went on air and starts with a real disinformation campaign about how we're not going to give in to the demands of those who are waving Nazi flags. He's called them racists and misogynists. This from the Prime Minister, by the way, who has done blackface so many times he can't remember how many, and has groped a female reporter And yet he dares to call other people racist and misogynist, which is nonsense. But go watch. We have a video on LifeSite that we did yesterday. We featured, there was a videotape of a trucker who's Sikh saying he hasn't seen any racism on the ground there in Ottawa. And you go look. Canada is one of the most diverse countries on the planet. We have people from every social and racial background here. And you see on the streets there a massive group. First of all, it's tens of thousands, if not over 100,000 people. Because you have to remember, it's 30 below zero. Our scales come together so closely, you might as well say it's Fahrenheit or Celsius. It doesn't matter because at negative 40, they're all the same. And we're nearing that temperature out there. So it's ridiculously cold. And yet there's tens of thousands of people packed together. So you know what? When you're at negative 30 and you're out there, you're only ever out there for 2 hours at a time. So any photo you see, any video you see of these massive crowds, you're looking at a 2-hour window. This is a rotating crowd. So there are tens of thousands, if not over 100,000 people milling around Ottawa. There were on Saturday. That was the main day. But even after on Sunday, we had footage of just massive crowds still there. I was there again on Monday. We went up in a chopper. You can see trucks lining the street, Wellington, and then 6 streets leading up to Wellington. Wellington is the street that runs in front of our Parliament buildings, and then all sorts of streets that run up to it. And you might wonder, where are the 50,000 trucks or so that were said to have been part of this convoy? Well, a lot of them were blocked and trying to enter Ottawa. And there's video of that. You see them trying to enter in, police blocking them. In fact, even huge tractors blocking them as well. So, and there's more trucks coming still. So this is not over. The organizers have said they're ready to stay. You know, they're talking about during the summer, these will be turned into street parties. So they might be in for a long haul. And Trudeau's doubling down.
Yeah. John Henry, people in the U.S. understand. How is it that Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, who came up for re-election in September for the 3rd time, how was it? Now, this is like, almost 18, 20 months into the pandemic. So people had a sense of what this mandate regime was all about. How was it that he was able to hold onto power?
Well, say a couple things. First of all, remember the Dominion voting systems that was the big controversy over the Trump elections? They're centered where? Oh, in Canada. Yes, they are. So I don't think we only exported our product, but I think it might have been used here at home as well. So there's election fraud for sure going on. But remember that lockhold of the media, total lockhold of all of the mainstream media. We do not have a Fox News here. We don't have anything even remotely close. And I'm not saying Fox is right wing by any means. I think they might be, they might give some fairer glimpse, especially on Tucker. But there is no such thing here in Canada. It's only alternative media. And then in the beginning, everybody was willing, especially the Canadians. When it was 2 weeks to flatten the curve, everybody said, yes, oh my gosh, we are going to do everything we can to help our brothers and sisters out. As this started to play out more and more, as people start to catch on more and more, and the real hardcore vax mandate didn't come till later. And so this was slowly done. And during the election, there was still some sense of giving them the benefit of the doubt and so on. But I think now, especially with the advent of the Convoy for Freedom of the truckers, enough is enough. And that's one of the huge signs you see everywhere. Enough is enough. Canadians are ready to say enough is enough.
A couple of weeks ago, Dennis Prager had a real interesting piece. He kind of described the lockdown regimes throughout the world. And, Canada, I think, was one on his list. Let me read what he wrote, and maybe you can tell us if he's spot on this. He wrote, Canada is a moral embarrassment, but apparently most Canadians are perfectly content to live in a country moving toward dictatorship. They should replace the maple leaf on the Canadian flag with a sheep. Now, I don't get that sense watching these truckers. Is he kind of overstating it there, or do you really think things are going to turn in a dramatic way?
Well, if he wrote that before the convoy, then that was getting to be the general sentiment because it was so pathetic here. Remember, Canadians were initially locked out of their own churches, much to do with the acquiescence of our own spiritual leaders, which was a total shame. There were a few notable exceptions. Pastor Artur Pawlowski in Alberta, who was arrested for the same. But like those exceptions are the exceptions almost bar none. And so then you were frozen out of certain sections of the country. The whole eastern part of the country was basically blocked off. I lost access to my daughter who lived out there for 2 years. It was ridiculous. We have traveling restrictions to other countries such that if you go, there's the testing and then you have to quarantine for 14 days. Who can do that for business trips or whatever? So basically, I've been grounded for almost 2 years now. And they're still talking about actually increasing that. When I said Trudeau is doubling down, he's actually talking about putting up provincial borders such that we're going to require mandates to, vaccine passports to get through to another province, which is just unreal. It's exactly the same as if you were required for, vaccine passports to cross state borders. It's horrific what's happening. So I can understand Prager's saying that. It certainly seemed that way. And God willing, because of the truckers movement, we're going to see that turned around.
Well, many people are cheering on the truckers, including Elon Musk, Tucker Carlson, Donald Trump. There is a word that a similar convoy might be taking place in the U.S. The United States is sort of the car capital of the world. It's, cars originated from in Detroit. Everything is done mostly by truck, not so much by rail anymore. Do you suppose that this is going to inspire a movement, not just in the United States, but throughout the world?
It certainly is. In fact, it already has. So in Brazil, I think we saw it first, Brazilian truckers going, demanding freedom. We saw also in Ireland, lorries, as they call them there, also doing a drive for freedom. In fact, it was really neat to see in the Netherlands, who are very supportive of Canada. There was truckers in the Netherlands trucking with Canadian flags because, they were freed by the Canadian soldiers after the Second World War. So we have seen this, and we just saw the news that in the United States, they're going to be doing this as well. It is so beautiful to see. One thing that this is really done for the very first time, a lot of Canadians are so proud to be Canadians. I've never seen, as I did in Ottawa on Saturday, so many people draped in the Canadian flag. It was beautiful. It has brought back a patriotism that we have not seen in this country since before the 60s.
Well, I get the sense we were people get very complacent about liberty. And I think probably in the beginning, we weren't sure what we were dealing with. There was a lot of conformity. People were afraid because they didn't know. We were not getting a lot of information from China, where the virus originated. And now, we are finding out how everything is played out, that the vaccines are not what they have told us they are. The lockdowns have caused tremendous damage. And now we're seeing escalating death rates, not just on COVID, but everything, the collateral damage from the lockdowns. We're just starting to see it's now being felt. It's kind of, I know LifeSite here is expanding operation in the US, and we're very appreciative of that. Your news coverage has been just terrific on so many fronts. Tell us a little bit, do you ever try to get back into the United States? You were describing how difficult it is to go back and forth. But, I live in Michigan. People would come and go from Canada all the time. I have friends who live in upstate New York who used to travel through Canada. They no longer do that. Do you ever take the chance that you could travel to the US or vice versa? Because now you have vaccine proof. Is that still going on? I mean, is travel dead?
Well, it is still going on. The vaccine mandates are still there. We have in place still the necessity to, if you're not vaccinated, to do the testing and then to do the quarantine. For me, the quarantine has killed it. I go to daily mass. It is for me a sustenance for my soul that I can't do without, and it's my greatest love. And so for me, it has ended travel, if we have such a thing. I have a hope, though. I have a great hope that we are going to see change. And I think it will come in large part thanks to the movement of truckers, because they've made us realize that we have to fight for freedom. And we have to fight for freedom, not only for ourselves, but for our children. What are we doing? So many children who are young. I've got a 10-year-old.
Yeah.
Do they even remember times before the masking and the lockdowns? I don't know, because we have in Canada, maximum of 10 people again you're supposed to have in your home. We had 8 children, so that would be our whole 10 right there. And what do the people do who have more than 8 children? Which child are they supposed to send out of the house? It is total insanity. And yet that's what's going on. It is a realization right now that in order to have our freedoms, we have to fight for them. And there was a neat meme going around that really spoke volumes to me. It was a photo of the Second World War and Canadians marching to war, and that this is what the March for Freedom looked like then. And then a picture of the truckers, and this is what the March for Freedom looks like now. And there's arduous hardship going on at the Canadian border in Alberta. They're being refused food and water and gasoline. And here the truckers are being, there's people being ticketed in Ottawa. There's a lot of hardship going on as well as the government attempts to push them out, but they're ready to make the sacrifices for freedom. Not only their freedom, all Canadians' freedom.
Well, John Henry Weston, it's been a pleasure chatting with you. Tell us real quickly where people can find LifeSite content, because you were booted off YouTube, and that's almost now a badge of honor these days, huh?
Yeah.
Where can people find LifeSite?
Twitter, YouTube, just about everything. So we always tell people, please come direct. Lifesitenews.com. That's LIFESITE news.com. If you want to check out our video offerings, on the top right-hand side of the page, it says watch. Click there and you see all our video offerings. We have coverage usually 5 days a week, sometimes more, upwards of 30 articles a day every day. And so there's tons of coverage. We have reporters all over the world, including very many in the United States, and we have very detailed coverage. We've been there for 25 years now because we know the fake news story has been around at least that long and long.
Well, John Henry Weston from LifeSite News, thank you so much for joining us, and do keep up the good work. Hang on to your hat. We'll be praying and thinking about you, and we hope that you'll check back with us a little bit later on.
Thanks so much, Anne-Marie. Great to be with you, and God bless you and all your viewers.
All right. And thank you, listeners and viewers. We always appreciate your support. And do become a regular subscriber, share our links, and give us a thumbs up on your favorite listening platform. All it does a whole bunch to support the free market message. Thank you for joining us. I'm Anne-Marie Schieber.
Thanks for watching this video. Please subscribe to our channel and consider donating to the Heartland Institute to support more vibrant free markets, greater individual liberties, and more videos like this one.